And then too, when you speak, you take your mask off and you do your thing, and then put it back on. Don't do it while you're moving. We're demonstrating safety. And then go back down. This way. Okay? All right. Hi.
When I do the reflection, before I do that, I would before zero. I didn't do the reflection, the two on that.
Right. So I change the order of red flags and down by the video first. And then you
first, right?
Yes,
And then I'm coming.
correct.
Okay. That's
See, your name's in green
Yeah,
right here.
I understand that,
Okay.
but they were telling me just the opposite. Marjorie's first.
But the difference is too that after Joan,
Check with her. Look right here. No, up here, up here. Marjorie B. Then Joan. She likes, okay, then, okay. Okay, thank you.
yeah, you're first.
Okay.
Joan's second. Michelle's gonna say some words about the Rittenhouse verdict and let a third chalice, which also changed. And then,
Pat comes
and
after
then
me.
Pat will
Pat
come.
comes after me, right?
Yeah, Pat will come. I mean, yeah, and then you're just gonna sit back down, right? And then do your Thanksgiving address parts, and then go down, right?
You're speaking. And it's right up there.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Amherst. Our welcoming words today come from Katie Romano Griffin. I should have gone over. It's just a forward. Pointed up towards there, and it's the forward arrow. Yeah. Okay. Welcome. Come, let us enter this space of hope and community. Come, let us enter this space with our sorrows, our joys, our passion and compassion. Come, let us enter this space with the stories of our ancestors, for their strength and wisdom beats in our hearts. Come into this space, present to the beloved companions who move beside us. Come into this space, mindful that together we are building a future for other generations. Come into this space and let us worship. Good morning and welcome to this beloved community of the Church of Amherst. I'm Angela Warren, the Director of Faith Development for this congregation, and my pronouns, which I offer to create a truly inclusive and brave space for all to live into the fullness of their identities, are she and her. We're so glad to have you in this service, whether that's in our building or online. Together, we create a multi-generational, beloved, worshiping community. Just a reminder that in our efforts to be as fully inclusive as possible and to care for one another, masks must be worn while you're in the building unless you are speaking at the pulpit. Okay, one more try. Thanksgiving is coming, and as much as it's a holiday about gathering as families, it's also a difficult time for those who may not have family nearby or have family who is estranged. Although we're not yet in a position where we can offer a communal meal at church, perhaps we can reach out individually and add a place setting or two to our home gatherings. If you're willing to participate in a bit of Thanksgiving matchmaking, sign up to be a guest or a host. These clipboards will be on the glass wall where there were sign-up clipboards 2 years ago before we stopped meeting together, close to 19 months. We were trying to familiarize with and then sort of everything fell apart, as we know. But we can't guarantee matches. We'll never know if we don't create the opportunity, and that's what we are all about at this church. Today, I'm honored to share the pulpit with participants from our UU University Sunrise Sessions. We extend our welcome to PJ Tents from Riverside Salem United Church of Christ, who shared in our learning. We've gathered online since September to explore Robin Wall Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass, indigenous wisdom, scientific knowledge, and the teachings of plants. At each morning gathering, we offered one another companionship, continuity, and connection. We centered presence, attention, and patience with one another, and we extend those same intentions to all who are gathered in this sanctuary today.
We begin our time together by lighting the chalice, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. Please join me in speaking these opening words. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We like the Pope, sign of our quest for truth and meeting, in celebration of the life we share together.
We also would like to share our chalice lighting words from the morning's book study. May we gather this morning to explore indigenous wisdom whose worth is finally being recognized. May we learn as the trees do, with deep holy listening, interconnected, using the circle way as a form of practice.
Friends, I want to take a moment to acknowledge something that has happened in our country this week as a young man was found not guilty for murdering protesters in Wisconsin. And so, holding the sorrow, the injustice, and frankly, for me, the concern for future protesters and their safety and what this precedent can mean in our country, in a country that is just so divided and so broken. So, in a moment, I'm going to gather the flame from our shared chalice and to light a chalice of sorrow, of concern, but also of hope, that we can continue to be the people who respond in love, who work for justice and compassion in our world. And so I ask you to just hold that intention as I light that chalice.
Now we'll do the Congregational Covenant.
It has been said that the Unitarian Universalism is the religion that puts its faith in you, trusting each individual to engage in the spiritual journey and to reach our own conclusions about spiritual matters. What we do that in beloved community as we support one another in faith and friendship. In that spirit, this congregation has created a covenant, a sacred promise of how we will strive to be with one another. Please join me in speaking the covenant. Together we promise to gather in compassionate community, to celebrate diversity of thought and unity of spirit, and to seek wholeness for ourselves, our children, and our world.
Land acknowledgement. UUAmherst included a land acknowledgement for the first time during our Thanksgiving service last year. This practice came out of our climate justice work during 2019 and 2020, and we are grateful for our continued focus. As we gather, we acknowledge that our church is built on occupied land that once belonged to the First Nation people of this region, the Haudenosaunee, and the people known as the Neutrals before them. May we be good stewards of the land and courageously cultivate community with all living things. Today, we extend gratitude for permission from Seneca Nation leaders to share the words of the Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving address. We learned from Onondaga storyteller Perry Ground that these are the words that come before all others. They bind us together and ground us in gratitude for all we are surrounded by, including one another. We invite you to respond with the affirmation, "Now our minds are one," at the end of each stanza. The people. Today we have gathered and we see that the cycles of life continue. We have been given the duty to live in balance and with each other and all living things. So now we bring our minds together as one as we give greetings and thanks to each other as people. Now our minds are one. The Earth Mother. We are all thankful to our Mother, the Earth, for she gives us all that we need for life. She supports our feet as we walk upon her. It gives us joy that she continues to care for us as she has from the beginning of time. To our Mother, we send greetings and thanks. Now our minds are one.
The waters. We give thanks to all the waters of the world for quenching our thirst and providing us with strength. Water is life. We know its power in many forms: waterfalls and rain, mists and streams, rivers and oceans. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to the Spirit of water. Now our minds are one. The fish. We turn our minds to all the fish life in the water. They were instructed to cleanse and purify the water. They also give themselves to us as food. We are grateful that we can still find pure water. So we turn now to the fish and send our greetings and thanks. Now our minds are one.
The plants. Now we turn towards the east. Now we turn towards the vast fields of plant life, as far as the eye can see. The plants grow, working many wonders. They sustain many life forms with our minds gathered together. We give thanks and look forward to seeing plant life for many generations to come. Now our minds are one. The food plants, with one mind, we turn to honor and thank all the food plants we harvest from the garden. Since the beginning of time, the grains, vegetables, beans, and berries have helped the people survive. Many other living things draw strength from them too. We gather all the plant foods together as one and send them a greeting of thanks. Now our minds are one.
The medicine herbs. Now we turn to all the medicine herbs of the world. From the beginning, they were instructed to take away sickness. They are always waiting and ready to heal us. We are happy they are still among us, those special few who remember how to use these plants for healing. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to the medicines and to the keepers of the medicines. Now our minds are one. The animals. We gather our minds together to send greetings and thanks to all the animal life in the world. They have many things to teach us as people. We are honored by them when they give up their lives so we may use their bodies as food for our people. We see them near our homes and in the deep forests. We are glad they are still here, and we hope that it will always be so. Now our minds are one.
The trees. We now turn our thoughts to the trees. The earth has many families of trees who have their own instructions and uses. Some provide us with shelter and shade, others with fruit, beauty, and other useful things. Many people of the world use a tree as a symbol of peace and strength. With one mind, we greet and thank the tree life. Now our minds are one. The birds. We put our minds together as one and thank all the birds who move and fly about over our heads. The Creator gave them beautiful songs. Each day they remind us to enjoy and appreciate life. The eagle was chosen to be their leader. To all the birds, from the smallest to the largest, we send our joyful greetings and thanks. Now our minds are one.
The four winds. We are thankful to the power we know as the four winds. We hear their voices in the moving air as they refresh us and purify the air we breathe. They help us bring the change of seasons. From the four directions they come, bringing us messages and giving us strength. With one mind, we send our greetings and thanks to the four winds. Now our minds are one. The thunderers. Now we turn to the west, where our grandfathers, the thunder beings, live. With lightning and thundering voices, they bring with them the waters that renew life. We bring our minds together as one to send greetings and thanks to our grandfathers, the thunderers. Now our minds are one.
The sun. We now send greetings and thanks to our eldest brother, the sun. Each day, without fail, he travels the sky from east to west, bringing the light of a new day. He is the source of all the fires of life. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to our brother, the sun. Now our minds are one. Grandmother Moon. We put our minds together to give thanks to our oldest grandmother, the moon, who lights the nighttime sky. She is the leader of women all over the world, and she governs the movement of the ocean tides. By her changing face, we measure time, and it is the moon who watches over the arrival of children here on earth. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to our grandmother, the moon. Now our minds are one.
The stars. We give thanks to the stars who are spread across the sky like jewelry. We see them in the night, helping the moon to light the darkness and bringing dew to the gardens and growing things. When we travel at night, they guide us home. With our minds gathered together as one, we send greeting and thanks to the stars. And now our minds are one. The enlightened teachers. We gather our minds to greet and thank the enlightened teachers who have come to help throughout the ages. When we forget how to live in harmony, they remind us of the way we were instructed to live as people. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to these caring teachers. And now our minds are one.
The Creator. Now we turn our thoughts to the Creator, or Great Spirit, and send greetings and thanks for all the gifts of creation. Everything we need to live a good life is here on this Mother Earth. For all the love that is still around us, we gather our minds together as one and send our choicest words of greetings and thanks to the Creator. Now our minds are one.
You're still here.
Oh. We have now arrived at the place where we end our words. Of all the things we have named, it was not our intention to leave anything out. If something was forgotten, we leave it to each individual to send such greetings and thanks in their own way. Now our minds are one.
As Reverend Michelle stated in last year's Thanksgiving service, "Now our minds are one" is not an authoritarian declaration to force us into lockstep. It is an invitation to harvest gratitude for the magnificent world we have been gifted, to share the abundance that life offers us, and to participate in a world of gift through reciprocity, giving and receiving. At the beginning of this 2021 calendar year, we had been gathering solely online already for 10 months. We were all struggling with the sudden isolation mandated by the ongoing pandemic. This community created virtual spaces of companionship, seeking to make sure that we continued to offer places of connection, learning, and common interest. We created virtual villages. We watched important justice-centered films. We wrote cards and made phone calls to one another. We stayed busy. We stayed together even as we were physically apart. The UU Side with Love campaign offered an opportunity to learn more about racial justice with their 30 Days of Love, beginning on Martin Luther King Jr. Day and ending on Valentine's Day. I had a notion that it would be a great time to take this literally, and created the space that became our UU University Sunrise Sessions. During those 30 mornings in a row, every morning, Saturdays and Sundays too, a true bond was forged among the participants, and the group was inspired to continue meeting through the next 40 days of Lent. The beloved bond continued to emerge as we all navigated the continued isolation, even as we gradually emerged from the pandemic cocoon. 11 months later, it continues to be a space where we come as we are to center our relationship to this beloved community. After Lent, as we delve further into social justice and continue to find our own sense of our place in the web of life, we were compelled to take a deep dive into Braiding Sweetgrass. And today, some of our participants will share their personal takeaways from this study. One of our prompts from these sessions from the chapter Epiphany in the Beans, which I have epiphanies in the beans too. There's nothing like going out in the garden and eating fresh beans and coming into the house not hungry. Quoting the author, "Food, plants, and people act as selective forces on each other's evolution. The thriving of one in the best interest of the other. This, to me, sounds a bit like love." End quote. Robin Wall Kimmerer, a professor of biology at SUNY Environmental School of Forestry in Syracuse, tells the stories of wondering with her students who say they love nature. She says, "Do you think that the earth loves you back? And what do you suppose would happen if people believed this crazy notion that the earth loved them back?" Now that sounds like the notion of a holy troublemaker. Oops, see, lots of slides and inexperience. Who would think of that, the earth loving us back? Well, an unimposing woman, poet, and scientist of the Potawatomi Nation, even though she was told by her academic advisor that she couldn't be both poet and scientist. In Braiding Sweetgrass, she tells her story of growth and inspiration to become what only she could become, and in the process, inspired us all to grow into a new vision of how we can be in the world.
I could choose just a single element of the traditional teachings that we're called to pick up. It would be the teachings of the honorable harvest, which were taught us by the plants, who give us everything that we need. It's a covenant of reciprocity between humans and the living world, a very sophisticated ethical protocol. One of the first steps of the honorable harvest is to understand that the lives that we are taking are the lives of generous beings, of sovereign beings. And in order to accept their gift, we owe them at least our attention. To care for them, we must know what they need. And at the very minimum, we should know their names. And yet, the average American can name over 100 corporate logos and 10 plants. Is it a surprise that we have accepted a political system that grants personhood to corporations and no status at all for wild rice and redwoods? The protocols for the honorable harvest are not really written down, but if they were, it would look something like this. When you get to the woods, you don't just start grabbing everything in sight. We're taught never to take the first plant that you see, and that means you'll never take the last. This is a prescription with inherent conservation value. And then if we encounter another plant, we ask permission. I've always been taught to address that plant, to introduce myself, and tell it what it is that I have come for. If you're going to take a life, you have to be personally accountable for it. I know there are places where if you talk to a plant, they think you are crazy, but in our way, it's just good manners. If you're going to ask, you have to listen for the answer. You can listen in different ways, pragmatically, intuitively. Look around, see whether those plants have enough to share. And if the answer is no, you go home. For we remember that they don't belong to us. And taking without permission is also known as stealing. And the Honorable Harvest counsels that we also take in such a way that does the least harm and in a way that benefits the growth of the plant. Use everything that you take. It's disrespectful of the life that's given to waste it. The next tenet of the Honorable Harvest is to share it with others, human and non. The earth has shared generously with us, so we have to model that behavior in return. And a culture of sharing, we know, is a culture of resilience. Plant gatherers often leave a spiritual gift behind, but it can also be a material gift. Weeding, caretaking, spreading seeds, helping those plants to flourish. We give songs, we give ceremony, we give our respect, we give fertilizer. Every breath that you take is a breath that was made for you by plants. On the water that you drink, whether you're in an urban setting, whether you're on a remote mountaintop, we still are recipients of those gifts. And if we take the time to be grateful, that brings us into that state of humility, of understanding that we are not at the top of a biological hierarchy, that in fact we are the younger brothers of creation.
According to indigenous tradition, being given a gift requires reciprocity. How can I give back to the earth for all the gifts it gives me? Robin Wall Kimmerer gives two broad suggestions. Be grateful for and pay attention to the living world. Using that framework, here are a few of the ways I think we can give back to the earth simply by being Western New Yorkers and members of this church. By learning about indigenous cultures and honoring their earth-based traditions, which are sometimes kinder than the biblical stories. For example, the creation story of the indigenous people is not the punishment of Adam and Eve's story, but that of Sky Woman, who brings gifts for the earth, and of the original man, who learns about living and being human from watching the animals. By reading books about nature, such as The Hidden Life of Trees by Peter Wolleben, which we read with the church's book club. Who knew about the beautiful interdependence of the trees in a forest with its layer of fungi creating networks of support? By being grateful to our church for inviting the goats to rid our property of invasive plants, and for holding bonfires that remind us of the beauty and the usefulness of our property. By being grateful for the acknowledgement of the original inhabitants of the land our church is built on at every Sunday church service. By learning or appreciating native crafts such as beadwork and basket making being taught and displayed in our area. By acknowledging the beauty of our neighborhoods, where the color of the trees changing seems to me to be especially brilliant this year. Or has braiding sweetgrass made me pay more attention and be more grateful? By being attentive to the Thanksgiving address recited with love and enthusiasm by Perry Ground in our chapel and by our group today. How else can I thank the earth for giving me so many gifts? Robin Wall Kimmerer suggests through advocacy and care, donating to the Western New York Conservancy or the Sierra Club or other advocacy organizations. I'm sure some of you are checking these off and saying, I do that, or I did that, or maybe I will do that. Voting is another suggestion. Find out if your state legislator is devoted to preserving New York State's wilderness areas and vote for him or her, or write them encouraging or maybe nasty letters. If you have the opportunity, plant for the birds, the bees, and the butterflies. Goldenrod and asters play an important part in the book. Educate your neighbors by planting native species in your garden. Have a bird bath, or maybe a bee bath. Take heart that citizens of other countries are seeing the need to protect their endangered wildlife from human and animal predators. Finally, Robin Wall Kimmerer shows her gratitude to the trees she uses in her teaching by leaving a small packet of sacred tobacco at the base of each tree and asking permission to use its gifts. I would not do that as a way of showing gratitude, but I can do the above actions in my life and hope that I am showing gratitude, attentiveness, and reciprocity in my own ways.
We'll pause for a time of quiet reflection. This is from Braiding Sweetgrass, The Consolation of Water Lilies. We are showered every day with gifts, but they are not meant for us to keep. Their life is in their movement, the inhale and the exhale of our shared breath. Our work and our joy is to pass along the gift and to trust that what we put out into the universe will always come back. Let's pause for a time of quiet reflection to listen for that still small voice, however you name that. Spirit of community, of life and love, in which we share and find strength and common purpose. We turn our minds and hearts towards one another, seeking to bring into our circle of concern all who need our love and support. Those who are ill, those who are in pain, either in body or in spirit, those who are lonely or grieving, those who have been wronged. Holding in your heart the names of those needing love and support, we invite you to come forward and place a stone or shell on the labyrinth in honor of joys, concerns, and sorrows that you carry today. Please come forward and place your stone or shell on the labyrinth. We are part of a web of life that makes us one with all humanity, one with all the universe. We are grateful for the miracle of consciousness that we share, the consciousness that gives us the power to remember, to love, and to care. Amen, Ashe, and blessed be. Our second personal reflection today comes from longtime member Marlena Rice, who's traveling for Thanksgiving. We're so grateful that she took the time to write and record her thoughts before she left, and we wish her safe and happy travels.
Walked us through her world. She carefully placed us among the plants, animals, and all humanity. She had us walk with her as she explored the connections we all have with everything living. Reciprocity was to me her most important and final conclusion. There is a give and take among all things, but not a taking with the notion of greed or hoarding, nor is it giving until there's nothing left to give. The reciprocity must come through and with forethought. This forethought entails the understanding and appreciation of all that is around. And this need to be aware of one's true needs. This book came to mean to me Gandhi's words. There's enough for everyone's need, but not for everyone's greed. The world, viewed through the author's eyes, was not one of scarcity, nor greed, nor fear. Her world was a world of generosity, abundance, and love. We must each do our part and look around and realize that it is paramount for us to think about what true need is and not go about the world with a lack of consideration that breeds greed and scarcity, but rather look around the world and realize, as the Native Americans did, that the world, Mother Earth, is an abundant, wonderful, and generous mother. But we must take care of this mother and treat her with deep and abiding respect, so she will be here with all her abundance to take care of the generations that will follow.
A recurring theme in Braiding Sweetgrass was Kimmerer's idea of a bill of responsibilities, not just a bill of rights, as we learned in school. She felt that we should widen the circle of responsibility to include not just our own families and immediate community, but to include the well-being of the greater community as well. And the greater community for Kimmerer includes not just our fellow humans, it includes the trees, the animals, the water, the sky, and the land, all of which contribute in their own way to sustain and nourish us. And as they nourish us, we should care for them in kind. Our responsibility to the greater community, according to Kimmerer, encompasses the loving behaviors that we show our own families. The list of loving behaviors that Kimmerer talked about, our participant, Linda Gardner, remarked that this list sounds a lot like our Unitarian Universalist principles. They are as follows: nurturing health and well-being, protection from harm, encouraging individual growth and development, the desire to be together, generous sharing of resources, working together for a common goal, celebration of shared values, interdependence, sacrifice by one for the other, and the creation of beauty.
Since my daughter lived in Syracuse and Robin Wall Kimmerer, the author, lived in Syracuse area too, I knew firsthand the Native Americans were working on cleaning up Onondaga Lake. Robin mentions in Braiding Sweetgrass the damage was done to the lake from the Solvay process, Allied Chemical, and Honeywell. About 5 years ago, I saw firsthand with my family when we biked around the lake that some cleanup had been done. It was a gorgeous sight without the stench of the 90s when my daughter first moved there. Now I wonder how our Native people cleaned up the lake so well, and if they had help and who helped them. We learned from Kimmerer in the chapter, The Sacred and the Superfund, that cleanup efforts were more a Band-Aid than an actual solution, and that the Onondaga Nation land rights actions were dismissed from federal court in 2010.
Kimmerer remarks on the struggle of her people and of all of us. She says of the destruction of the original ecosystem of Onondaga Lake, the site of the formation of the oldest sacred democracy. Quote, "More frightening to me than the act of execution is the mindset that allowed it to happen, that thought it was okay to fill a lake with toxic stew." And she says of the water has been tricked. It started on its way full of innocence, full of its own purpose. Through no fault of its own, it has been corrupted. And instead of being a bearer of life, it must now deliver poison. And yet, it cannot stop itself from flowing. It must do what it must do with the gifts bestowed upon it. It is only people who have a choice. We have agency. And then she remarks, water is more faithful to its responsibilities than the United States may ever be. How, in the face of such destruction, where despair looms so large, can we keep trying to make the will of the powerful bend towards care for anything other than profit? We are stronger together, and there are means through our agency, through the gift of our consciousness, and through the sharing of our gifts, no matter what the size, that can continue to bend the arc of change towards justice and towards peace. We do this through relationship building with each other and with the places that we live in, and here at our church home, where we gratefully will continue to tend to all of the gifts bestowed upon us by our Earth Mother, who encourages us to share with all of our lives.
We conclude our Braiding Sweetgrass Thanksgiving service with the guidelines for the honorable harvest that are printed on the back of your order of service. These are Kimmerer's suggested words. Know the ways of the ones who take care of you, so that you may take care of them. Introduce yourself. Be accountable as the one who comes asking for life. Ask permission before taking. Abide by the answer. Never take the first. Never take the last. Take only what you need. Take only that which is given. Never take more than half. Leave some for others. Harvest in a way that minimizes harm. Use it respectfully. Never waste what you have taken. Share. Give thanks for what you have been given. Give a gift in reciprocity for what you have taken. Sustain the ones who sustain you, and the earth will last forever.
Thank you all for joining us in worship today. I hope you've been inspired and uplifted by sharing this time together. You can support the work and mission of this congregation by leaving your financial gift in one of the offering baskets at the back of the chapel. Please join me as we affirm, we pick fruit from trees we did not plant. We drink water from wells we did not drink. This is as it should be, so long as we dig and plant for those who will come after us. And today, you're invited into reciprocity by receiving a gift from our giveaway table at the back of the chapel. Please help yourself to a blade of sweetgrass that's in the center of the table. Thank you, PJ, for bringing that to us. And any of the spirit-filled gifts or the food gifts that are on the table. They're for your sharing, as are the homegrown potatoes. There's little sacks next to a colander. The ones in the colander are what grew on our campus here. You can take some, put them in a bag, take them home, eat them, or you can put them in the pantry as a gesture of generosity and gratitude. And now we extinguish our chalice with these familiar words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Yeah, I think that's you. That again and actually maybe sing through our masks. Ready? Okay. Travel light and travel easy till I see you once again. Travel light and travel easy and a benediction is a blessing, a way to close the sacred place we have shared and to transition to our regular lives, knowing we are deeply connected even when apart. We leave one another with these familiar words of celebration and prayer. May your house be a place of happiness for all who enter it, a place where the old and young are renewed in each other's company, a place for growing, a place for music, a place for laughter. And when shadows and darkness fall within its rooms, may it still be a place of hope and strength for all who enter it, especially for those who may be entrusted to your care. May no being be alien to your compassion. May your larger family be the family of all creation. And may those who are nearest to you and dearest to you constantly be enriched by the beauty and the bounty of your love for one another. Thanks for being here, everyone, and thank you so much to all of our participants today. Amen.